Hey guys, I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft, and I was tagged by Mr. William Collins to do a VR on the 8 questions and 5 tags. And I wrote these questions down so I go through them and make sure I don't miss anything. And I appreciate him asking me to do this, and I certainly enjoy doing it. Number 1, the most memorable camp. Well, I've had a lot of memories while out camping, both with the family and with different groups as I've gone out. But I must say one of my most memorable was I was camping up in the mountains with a group, and I was hanging in a hammock, and the tree at the head of my hammock was right at a really steep ravine. And in the early morning I heard something climbing up that tree and then falling down or stepping down very hardly, stepping down hard on the area right beside my hammock and actually underneath my rainfly. And I reached up and I grabbed the corner of my hammock and I pulled it down, and I looked, and there was a mother bear with her cub. So we locked eyes and looked face to face, and I was about 6 inches nose to nose from her. And she just kind of hissed at me like a cat would do. I didn't even know bears hissed like that. And I just let that hammock side back up and started to contemplate how I was going to get out of that hammock if anything happened. So sleeping with my knife, I sit there and I put that beside me with the plans of slitting the bottom of that hammock where at least I could get on the ground and not be like a big burrito. But just sitting there, letting her do her thing and take her cub and go through the camp and go over and go through some trash cans next door to me. And wound up being an uneventful night, but it made for some pretty interesting stories the next morning. So if I had to pick just one camp that a memory sticks out in my head, being 6 inches from a black bear with her cub, that would have to be my top story. Number 2, solo camp or group camp? Which one do I prefer? Most of the time, it's just me going out camping, but I do enjoy going with the family. We've had great experiences out with one another, and I look forward to doing that a lot more. But the group camp thing, I enjoy that too, but not at like campgrounds and stuff with a lot of other campers around. I don't like a lot of people right up next to my camp and making noise in the middle of the night and that type of stuff. So it really depends on where the group camp is. But I do enjoy getting together with people of like-mindedness when we're getting together. I go to the Pathfinder Gathering every year. It's a fantastic event. It's family-oriented. It's well-structured and laid out. And I get to meet some of the coolest people that I've ever met. Everything from survival instructors to just homesteaders to just your everyday people who just enjoy the outdoors and come together to share experiences and skills. And in that type of a group setting, or when we're out teaching survival classes and people are there because they want to learn and they're just enjoying everything that's going on, I must say that appeals to me greatly. But on the most part, I do the solo thing for the peace and solitude, going out and practicing my skills. Sometimes I don't even take a camera with me. I just want to go out and spend that time to get closer to nature, spend a little bit of time with God, and it's where I feel most at home and most comfortable, especially when you start getting stressed out a little bit. That seems to reset me a little bit, and I enjoy that. Question 3, favorite knife. That's another one that's hard to answer, because if I had to pick a favorite knife, it would be this one right here. This is a PLS K1, and this knife was awarded to me the first year that I attended the Pathfinder Gathering, and it was the top prize, and there were a lot of other prizes that went with it that were very cool, but this was the one that I treasured the most. It was given to me by L.T. Wright himself, who personally made this knife. It's a one-off design with some colors and the sheath option that it came with, And that whole event was very challenging. It started off, I was involved in a vehicle accident on the way there. I almost turned around and went home. I suffered a couple of broken ribs. I went to the challenge. I really struggled through the challenge. There were a lot of great people competing in it, but I was blessed and wound up making it to the final round and won that. And being presented this knife by Dave and LT was just a fantastic experience. And the tool itself, it has just lended itself to being a very usable, very workable knife that I have enjoyed for a long time now, and I use it in every single survival class or bushcraft class that I teach. But if you're looking for something as far as an everyday carry type knife, when I'm at work and every day around the house, I use a Leatherman. This one is the Wave. It's really the one that I prefer. It's just an all-around nice size. It has all of the options on it that I need as far as the saws and the blades and the tools that help me do my job. But I kick it up a little bit in this sheath. I keep an ink pen, a Right in the Rain ink pen on one side and a ferro rod on the other side. So I always have a cutting tool and my ferro rod with me all of the time. And this is going to start to sound like a commercial for the Pathfinder school, but the Pathfinder Knife Shop recently come out with this knife, and this is very similar to the PLS K1 that LT made with Dave Canterbury, and this is the Mountain Lion. And the PLS K1 is in 01 tool steel, and this one is in 1095. And I've really come to enjoy 1095. When it has a proper heat treat, it's just a phenomenal steel for me. It works fantastic in my area. And I've really come to enjoy this blade profile for my outdoor activities, no matter if it's hunting, fishing, camping, bushcraft. It just lends itself to its everyday workability. But if you're talking about the knife that I strap on my side when I go out hiking and just on a scout, and I want to have a good sheath knife mounted to my side, a couple of years ago I was introduced to the Pathfinder Knife Shop Scorpion, and I find myself constantly going back to that knife just because it's big enough to do most anything that I need it to do, especially in the short term. But yet its everyday function has just been fantastic. Yeah, I use it in the kitchen, I use it when I'm doing yard work, I use it when I'm out in the woods, I take it on the boat when I go fishing, kayaking, and now they've come out with the Dirty by Design, which has the curly maple handles, which I've always loved curly maple. I have a woodworking background and I just love the grain in that wood. And that right out of the forge look, it just looks like something that walked out of years past. But the profile of this blade and being thinner and the high Scandi, it just it works for me, and it seems to be the one that now I carry on my side most of the time. One favorite knife is the PLS K1 that I won, just because of the memories, the challenge, the having to just really stick it out and endure the pain and the rain and the weather and everything else that happened during that event, the memories that go along with that knife, and the presentation of that knife, the fit and function and the usability of it. I'd have to say that that is my absolute favorite. So where did you learn bushcraft or woodcraft? That is question number 4. Well, I grew up in the country. I didn't have a lot of people in the area that I grew up that were my age, and those that did get together, there was only 3 or 4 of us. We spent a lot of time on the river. They called us river rats, and we enjoyed spending time in the woods, and I got into hunting and all of that. So that farm slash being out in the country atmosphere really lended itself a lot to learning what's now considered bushcraft, which back then I didn't realize it was bushcraft. I thought it was just going out in nature and having a good time. But over time, I got hired as a firefighter and a medic, and I was presented the opportunity to go out and do some medical coverage for a survival group that was going out a couple of times a year. And there wasn't a whole lot of activity going on, but the older gentleman that ran that activity, because instead of just sitting around and waiting for an accident to happen, I would help him out in his teaching. And I never taught. I would just help set up the classroom or the area or get his tools together. When he was teaching one thing, I would have his next materials ready to go, and then when he was done, I would help him pack out. And he just became a good friend of mine, spent a lot of time mentoring me and just showed me a lot of the outdoors as far as plants and processing animals and building fires and building shelters and making cordage, and just a lot of the things that, like I said, now you would call bushcraft or woodcraft, but back then I just associated it with the survival classes. After a few years, that went away, and I got caught up in the normal routine of life and work and family and building my house and a lot of other stuff, and that part kind of waned away, and I stuck with my hunting and fishing as much as I could. But I saw the opportunity to get back into survival, and I wanted to have some type of a formal training or challenges to get my skills up to where I had the confidence to go out and teach others. And I found the online classes through the Pathfinder School, started watching a lot of Dave Canterbury's videos, just absorbed as much of that as I could, and then going out and practicing those skills. Wound up doing their phase 1 and phase 2 by video submissions, and then went to the Pathfinder gatherings and some other events that they hosted, and that gave me the confidence that I needed to own those skills. And that leads right up to the day to where I take groups out and we enjoy those types of activities. But really it all started before I knew what bushcraft or woodcraft was. So question 5, favorite method to build a fire. Well, I was asked one time when I was doing an interview for an instructor position, what would be if I absolutely had to start a fire, how would I do that? And I said, give me a 55-gallon drum of jet fuel and a road flare. And that seemed to be an appropriate answer that got a few chuckles, because you want surefire, right? But when I'm out camping and practicing my bushcraft, flint and steel is my go-to. I love doing that whenever possible. I like using the ferro rod. I try to save the lighter for ease and comfort when I need that. But I enjoy processing up the bird's nest and the tinder bundle and doing the stages of materials that you need to be successful. And when it comes to something that we use for both reenacting and modern technology, and if you've got a really good knife with you, you can find a rock, and you were smart enough to have some char along with you and have a method of making char, flint and steel is that's the one that I prefer. I can do bow drill. Hand drill is really challenging in the eastern environment. Those doing things off of the landscape, there's a lot of satisfaction in that. It's a skill I think everyone should have, but for my go-to, it's flint and steel. Number 6, number 1 tool in a kit. Well, you would expect me to say knife, and a knife is a very important tool, but I believe that you really need several things when you're out there. You need a good cutting tool. You need a way to start fire. Containers are vitally important. A good stainless steel container that you can rely on to process up your water. Having some cordage with you, because making cordage out in the bush is challenging. Being dressed and having the proper cover. But with all of that said, for me, my number 1 tool is going to be my medical kit. And the reason I say that is because I'm a diabetic. And if you have any type of condition that you require an ongoing medical device or medicines or whatever to keep you healthy and to keep you strong while you're out there, that is very important to me. No matter what my skills are and how many tools I have, if I'm laid over against a tree just twitching, that's not going to, all of that tools is not going to do me any good. So for me, staying prepared, staying healthy, keeping my medicines with me, making sure that I have everything that I need, that if I get caught up in a situation where I'm away from home for a couple of days, I have the ability to maintain my health. So for me, it's everything that I need to maintain my pump. My insulin pump, that is. Okay. Number 7. Do you keep a bug out bag kit in your truck? I keep a bag in my truck. It's not really a bug out bag. It's more of a get home bag. I have a lot of the stuff in it that most people would have in a bug out bag. I live 20 miles from where I work. So it's not a big trek, but it's in storm conditions or adverse conditions. It could take me more than a day to get home, especially depending on what time I leave. So I do keep a bag, and it stays underneath the back seat of my truck, and I switch it to my other truck in the rear when I go, and I take it with me when I travel. And it has basically the 10 Cs plus some signaling equipment. With that, where I can either be very visible or I can kind of blend in, play the gray man, or stay camoed if I need to stay out of sight. But I've got enough food, and I've got water purification, and I have signaling and rescue and shelter and all of those things in that kit that I would need to get home. Now at home, I have a true bug out bag, and everybody in the family knows where that is. I live in an area that's on the water, so the area is prone to flooding. My house, not necessarily, but I can get cut off being able to leave my house during really bad storms. I'm in a hurricane area, and I'm within the zone of a nuclear power plant that if they had an emergency, depending on the winds and stuff, we could have to leave at a fairly rapid pace. So we have a lot more stuff in that bug out bag that pertains to our banking and our health care and all of those types of paperwork and documentation, insurance, and all of that you would need to leave and evacuate the area, with maybe even the possibility of not even being able to come back. So utilizing technology and thumb drives and that type of thing, and having some forms of financing that trip, keeping your vehicles to where they're never less than a half a tank of fuel, having extra fuel around the house that if you had to take off and get out of that area, you're not having to stop and get gas, and early evacuation is all a part of that plan. So yes, I have a bug out bag, but it's at home, and that's for not just me but the family, but I keep a get home bag in my vehicles at all times. Okay, question 8, favorite stove. I use a stove quite a bit. I like cooking over a campfire and enjoy a campfire most of the time while I'm out, but sometimes the weather or the fire restrictions do not allow us to have an open fire. If I'm hiking and I'm trying to go ultralight, most of the time I use an MSR pocket rocket and a small canister of fuel. Fantastic stove, works great. But for my everyday outings and bushcraft and what I keep in my truck and all of that type of stuff is this. This is a little alcohol stove. This one is from the Self-Reliance Outfitters, and I prefer this one because if I'm using conveyance, if I have conveyance, the weight doesn't bother me. And the advantage to this is it'll hold an entire bottle of alcohol within the stove. So that's a lot of cooking and heating up water for my coffee and teas. And I can carry one 8-ounce bottle with me in a relatively small package. And it serves my needs, and it's very easy to use, and it's accepted in most any places that have fire bans. Along with that though, anytime you're dealing with alcohol, setting up a way of blocking the wind is critical. So I do keep a small folding windscreen along with that. And that stove comes with a ring that you use as your offset for your cup. And I like using the canteen kit, which is a cup, a top, a little stove base, and a 1-quart canteen. Once again, from Self-Reliance Outfitters. Like I said, it's starting to sound like a commercial, but I like their equipment because it's bomb proof. It's never failed me. The research and the everything that they do in their equipment has lended itself to being a very usable piece of equipment, very versatile, and that's what I'm all about. If I can buy it once, cry once, be done with it, that's what I think the game should be about. Utilizing what you have, but when you go to upgrade, being able to buy it once and be done with it. And between the stove that's on the bottom of this and the stove that comes on the alcohol stove itself, alcohol being readily available and clean, that serves my needs very well. Now in that truck kit, I usually keep my bottle with me because I use it daily for my hydration needs. But in that little truck kit, I keep this little fold-up titanium stove right here, and this is a wet fire stove, and I use both wet fire and these little Epsit cubes in it, and it works extremely well. But once again, you need to have a good windscreen to go along with them, and those stoves seem to fit all of my needs very well. All right, last question, which Blackie had to throw in on us, and I'll go ahead and do that, which is actually question 9, would be, why did you create your YouTube channel? Well, I alluded to that earlier when I said I went through the phase 1 and phase 2 training at the Pathfinder School. It was an excellent training, but to submit my work in going through that training, I created the YouTube account so that I could take those videos and send them in for approval. Through that, and after I finished with that training, I gained so much knowledge through YouTube. I loved watching Morris Kohansky and Ray Mears and Dave Canterbury, and there's a lot of people out there that I learned a lot of stuff from, and I would watch them, listen to them, and then go out and try to duplicate that activity. And I figured if I gained all of that knowledge, I should be willing to give back, because different people say the same thing different ways, and people understand it, or maybe it's the second or third person you've had explain it, and now all of a sudden it clicks and you're able to go out. And I think it's important to pass that knowledge on to others. I keep my channel very clean. I don't do anything that I wouldn't want my child to watch on that channel, and I try to keep it so that our youth can view my channel without any concerns at all from their parents, or and it's just the way I am. It's the same way I end every single video with God bless, because there's so many things out there today that are cursing you, and we've become such a society of people that are self-absorbed, and they don't bless other people, and they don't try to bless other people. And YouTube is just a way of me of trying to give back and to bless others with the knowledge that I have obtained from other people on YouTube and schools and training that I've had in other places. And that's really the reason that I created that YouTube. Once was for school, and now it's just to give back to the community. Well, thank you, William, for asking me to do this. It was certainly a pleasure to do it, and I'm going to go ahead and tag several other people to, if they want to, if they can, to go ahead and also respond to this challenge or VR request. And for that, I would like to tag Darin of EastWoodlandSurvival. Darin hadn't put out a lot of videos here lately. His life situation has changed, I guess, but the quality of his videos and the information that he has put out is outstanding, and I would love to hear his response to these. Another one is Joe Common Sense Outdoors. Bobby's channel was Bobby Moody 1. Bobby is another one that puts out some great information, and I'd like to see his response to some of these, especially when it comes to that favorite knife. Let's see you try to narrow this one down a little bit. That's a challenging one. Creek with Black Owl Outdoors. You talk about some good video. The quality of his stuff is just fantastic, and he's a good spokesman, very clear in the way he presents his information, and I think that would be a great person. Another one, a smaller channel but puts out some great stuff, and I think it would be a good challenge for him, and I'd love to see his opinion, is Thomas with 116 Survival. So there you go, guys. Y'all are tagged. I'll put those people and the links to their YouTube accounts in the description or at the end of this video. So once again, thanks for watching. It was a pleasure bringing this to you. I am Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft, home of global safety and survival. Until next time, God bless.